Hey, welcome back to Nick Vick Locks. Today we'll be continuing the educational how to pick video series, but instead of discussing a particular security pin or type of lock, we'll be doing a deep dive on a specific lock. We've got a few more of these planned in the future. Today we'll be starting with the ABUS 7240. It is a green belt 40 millimeter aluminum body padlock. Commonly used as a lotto lock. At least that's what they advertise it and recommend it for. It is a green belt lock in the LPU belt ranking system, and next to the American 1100, it's probably the most common green belt lock picked, at least from what I can see. So I thought doing a deep dive on this particular lock might be useful for a lot of people as they're working their way through the belt ranking, or just wanting to pick more difficult locks, whether they participate in the belt system or not. But the ABUS 7240 is an aluminum body 6-pin lockout tagout lock made by the ABUS company. It is 6 pins, and all of the key pins are standard. There are no security key pins in this lock. There are 5 security driver pins here. The 6-pin that is not a security pin is a standard pin. It is in the first chamber here, starting from the front of the keyway, calling that 1 and back 6. It is a standard pin, and then the rest are all spools. Every 7240 that you ever grab and pick up will have the exact same security driver pins in them. No change. The only difference between the locks is the key bitting. And according to the website, there are over 40,000 key combinations that they can produce for this lock. But we'll get this opened and gutted and show you guys what all is inside of it. And we'll go through a few more just to show the consistency. All right. Is that 1? Pin 1. There we go. Pin 1, 2, 3, if I can get a pick on it. 3, 4, 5. All right, now we get to play Hunt the Spool. In this particular lock, when I first started picking these, I picked them in hand, and that's how I've learned to pick them. When I pick in hand, it's also more of a Euro style with the pins down. So I'm not that great at picking these in the vise, and I think that just boils down to how I was picking it when I learned the lock. There we go. So the core is held in place by a Phillips screw down the shackle. It has 2 ball bearings as the locking mechanism on it. So it's a fairly easy gut with the screw. There is a C-clip on the back of it. And my recommendation, if you have a key to the lock, there's no reason to keep it unlocked or to put the key in while you're removing the C-clip, because what's going to happen is you're going to hold this in your hand, you're going to try to push on it, and you're going to have movement of the core. If you have the key, just lock it back up and then take your wrench and get your C-clip off while it's locked. Then you can unlock it when you go to gut it or pull the core. Go like that. I like to have the extended part on the top near the driver pins, just so when I go to use my follower, I don't have this gap here at the that would be on top. I don't have that gap between the follower and the core, and then have to rely on the shim to keep the pins from falling. But that's just my preference. There we go. Come on. All right. Really, I just wanted to cover up the channel that clip sits into in the back. But you really don't need a shim for these, but it's always good practice just to use one. Set that down there for now. And our key pins. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Get these spun around. Pin 1 is standard. Pin 2 is a spool. And all the rest of these are going to be spools. 3 is a spool. 4 is a spool. 'When spring come out? It's 2. No, it's 1. Now the spools in the 7240, unlike the 1100, are not serrated. They're standard spools. And 6. There we go. Get the springs out. So yeah. Here we go. So this is our 7240 that we have picked. As you can see, standard in 1, all the rest spools. I think it's a good first greenbelt lock to go after. With your orange and yellow belts, you're dealing with spool pins. Those are the most common security pins. You're getting used to those or feel comfortable picking spools. So when you step into this, the only real thing is you're just increasing the number of pins and the number of spools that you're encountering, as well as a little bit of a smaller keyway, just because the lock itself is kind of small. It's fairly easy to gut. I think it's just slightly easier than the 1100, though the 1100 is not difficult. Just because it can only go in one way. You have a screw hole here on the back of the lock to tell you what the back of the lock is. A little recess right here for the front face of the core to sit into. It's just a Phillips screwdriver to get it out once it's open, which everybody has laying around, or should have laying around. And then fairly easy to put back together because you can't really do it wrong unless you mess up your pinning on it. But let's zoom out a little bit here. Tip I like to use, if you have springs that are sticking out into the body from the Bible a little bit, I like to put a shim down in there and then put my follower in and pull the shim out. That way my follower's not going to push on the springs when I'm trying to thread it through. And this, I like to go 4, 5, 6, and then 1, 2, 3. 4, 5, and 6. Now, the other thing with the 7240 to keep in mind is with that first pin being standard, depending on the bitting of the lock and where the other spools are sitting in relation to the shear line when the lock's at rest, setting that first pin, that's the standard, which more than likely is probably going to be the first pin to bind, just because the standard pin has a larger diameter than the spools, especially in the middle. Picking that standard pin will probably drop you into a false set from the get-go, which makes it a little bit easier to feel the spools and to set them. That is a nice benefit of this lock. And we'll get our key pins in. And then we'll gut another one just to show the driver pins that it's going to be the same across the board here. But I think this is a good stepping stone lock to pick up and work on before the 1100 if that's your goal. 1100 does only have 5 pins in it, but having the added security pins with the serrated pins and then the serrated key pins can increase the difficulty somewhat, especially going from some of the orange locks into the green. Yeah. So if you're looking to make the jump up, this would be the lock I recommend. Let's go with this one. This one has some dumb bitting on it. It is key retaining as well. Get our clip off. If my wrench doesn't want to fall into the channel. Just trying to there we go. Come on. There's my follower. Standard in 1. And then spools all the way down. Now, if the lock is giving you a lot of trouble while you're trying to pick it and work around or combat the spools, what I recommend, there we go, get that up, is getting some type of core holder. There it is. Does the other one fit better? About the same. Okay. So we'll get our core holder here. You know what? We'll go down and we'll zoom in a little bit here. Center that up. What I recommend is taking your driver pins and placing them into the core on top of the key pins so you can see where they sit relative to the shear line. What that'll do is it'll give you an idea of how the lock is going to behave while you are picking it, or at least what the pins are probably going to give you in terms of feedback and feel. And one of the interesting things with the 7240 is a max lift and a zero lift are more or less the same. So you can see pins 2 and 3 here on the key. And if we look here at the lock, pins 2 and 3 are almost flush. So you could, in theory, not touch those pins and the lock would still open. Whereas a zero lift pin, the top of the key pin will be at the shear line and the driver already in the Bible. But with the max lift pins, everything's sitting below the shear line. So you don't have to necessarily pick them at all. And then if we look through here, we can see that pins 1, 4, 5, and 6 are the only ones that really need to be lifted or picked. Based off of the way that the pins are sitting with the shear line, 5 and 6 being with the middle of the spool at shear, aren't going to bind right away. It's going to be pins 1 and 4, 4 being that spool where just the top of it's at the shear line. So 1 and 4 are probably going to be the first pins that bind and that will set, and then drop down to 5 and 6 to set those, and the lock will probably open unless we've bumped 2 and 3 to then raise them up to get caught at the shear line, in which case you'll have to then go back and pick those. But this was the little bit of a deep dive or overview on the 7240 to try to help new pickers out that are making the jump from orange to green. Just to try to make it a little bit easier, offer some help with it all. Hope this was useful in some way, or at least gave you some knowledge to help you out to get you to level up your picking. We'll do a deep dive on the 1100 as well. We've got a few other locks we'll be looking at. Probably the 98 Pro. A lot of people pick that up for their blue belt, as well as for the 200K club. And probably looks through the couple other locks that are pretty popular for the different belts and just go over those. Goal S be another one that we'll do a dive on. But hope you all find this helpful or enjoyable or educational or something. And I'll see y'all next time.